Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, we are learning for the sake of the Jewish people, as Rabbi Rose inspired us to say and to do. So that's why we're learning. Okay, so here we go. So we are on 94a4. The Mishnah spoke about a courtyard that was breached on two sides, right? We spoke about a courtyard that was breached on two sides on Shabbos. If it's breached on two sides on Shabbos, you can no longer, so there's discussion about whether you could carry on it for the rest of that Shabbos or not. Okay, then we had a house that was broken on two sides, and there again, same debates. Can you carry on it? Can you carry in that house on Shabbos or not? Those were two examples that were given. The Gemara is going to discuss those two examples about a house or a courtyard being broken up on both sides. The Gemara says, "B'mayaskina 94a4. What is the case the Mishnah is dealing with? Ilema be'eser amos. If you want to say be'eser, if you want to say that the Mishnah is talking about a courtyard that was breached with 10 amos or less, then Maishna Meruach Achas Damar Pischahu. Why is it that we say on one side we'll treat? What do we treat if a courtyard has an opening less than 10 amos? What do we treat that opening like? A doorway. Very good. Okay, so we treat it like a doorway. It's a door, right? In other words, if you have a fully enclosed area and there's a small opening in that area, that's not a breach, that's a door, right? That's just a doorway. So if it's less than 10 amos is always the measurement we've given for that. So if on one side, we'll treat it like a door. So mishtei ruchos nami pischahu. So then if it's breached on both sides less than 10 amos, it's still a door. Meaning one door, two doors, right? Do homes have more than one door? Yes, they do. Courtyards could have more than one door. So bottom line is, when the Mishnah says, oh, if it's breached on both sides, now it's no longer a courtyard. Why? So what are we talking about? If we're talking about when it's case it's less than 10 amos, meaning it's a door, essentially treated as a doorway, then why would we treat two openings any different? It's just two doorways. What's wrong with two doorways? It should still be considered an enclosed area, but now it's two doorways. All right? So Gemara says, Ela b'yasser mi'aser, if you want to say that it's a breach that's over 10 amos, then why does the Mishnah have to say, oh, it's breached on two sides? Once it's breached on one side, let's say you have an enclosed area, 4 walls, and one of those walls falls down. Now it's no longer a courtyard. Now it's no longer a private domain. You're no longer going to be able to carry in a place.
You have to mention both sides. It doesn't seem necessary.
You should only have to mention one side. Everyone with me on the case? Yeah, again. So if we're talking about an enclosed courtyard, we're asking like this: what's going on over here? If we're talking about a case where it's less than 10 amos, then it's a doorway. So then, when the Mishnah says, "Oh, it falls on both two walls are broken," now you can no longer carry there. Why? If we're talking about a case where it's less than 10 amos, then it's like a courtyard which has two doors. You should be able to carry there. And if it's more than 10 amos, then why do you need both doors? Once one side is breached open fully, now it is no longer going to be a kosher courtyard because it's breached more than 10 amos. Yeah?
We're only asking according to Rabbi Yehuda, right?
Yeah, we're not really getting into the differences. Well, we haven't really understood what Rabbi Yossi said yet. But yes, short answer is yes. Okay. Rav says, okay, we're going to see machlokes. La'olam be'eser. Really, we're talking about a breach of 10 amos or less, which normally is not going to be an issue. So why over here, when it's broke on two sides, is going to be an issue? Ukegon 94b1. Kugon shenifritz avikaran zavis. The breach is in the corner. The breach is in the corner. Look at the picture in the diagram by number 1. So you see there is a breach in the corner. If it's a breach to pischa avikaran zavis lo avdi inchi. People do not make doorways. This does not look like a normal doorway. This halacha that we say when a breach is less than 10 amos, it is seen as a doorway. That's only when it's on one of the walls. But if you have a breach in a corner, that is not your typical place, right? Have you ever seen a home which has a door in a corner? No. Have you ever seen a courtyard which has a door in the corner? No. It's not normal. And therefore, even though it's smaller than 10 amos, at the end of the day, this courtyard is seen as being completely open, even though it's less than 10 amos, because it's no longer seen as a doorway. And now we treat it as if now there's an actual hole in the walls, and therefore it's no longer enclosed properly. Yeah? So in this case, when it's in the corner, it's going to be a problem. Okay. But the Gemara now goes on to the next case of the Mishnah. Now we've been talking about the courtyard. What about the next case? Similarly, a house that was breached on two sides. Okay, so again, according to Rav, what are we talking about? We're talking about a case where it's less than 10 amos. So ask the Gemara the same question. In a home, if it's broken, if there's no wall on one side, we normally have the halacha, a pitikra, the edge of the roof is treated as if it goes down, right? We've seen the halacha many times, right? If this is my roof, a little more normal, this is my roof, so basically we treat it as if these walls are virtually going down, right? So now let's say, so there's 3 walls, one wall is gone. Okay, so we would say, no problem. Even though it's open on one side, we say, no, since there's a roof over here, we treat it as if it goes down, it's enclosed. And what would be the difference? Let's say there's a roof missing on this side as well. No problem. Again, we would say go down. So again, the Gemara is asking the same question. The same question we asked by a courtyard. If there is one wall missing or 2 walls missing, bottom line is, all of them are enclosed because this halacha that we have these virtual walls at the edges of the roof right? The virtual walls go down, and therefore it should be fully enclosed.
You should be talking about how the roof is broken, not the walls are broken. There's a doorway and there's no roof.
Good. The Gemara's going to get into that a little bit, but the bottom line is the simple read of the Mishnah is that the walls are broken, right? So the Gemara says, "Mishtei ruchos nami lema pitikra yervasosem." At the end of the day, on two sides, we should also say that it's considered intact because the edge of the roof extends downwards. So Amr Dvei Rav Mishmei de Rav, they said in the Academy of Rav, in the name of Rav, Kigon shenifratz bekaren zavis. Again, we're talking about a case where it's breached in the corner, okay, and the keruyo. So breached in the corner is not enough. In other words, in this case, if you're breached in the corner, at the end of the day, there's still a roof. You with me? In other words, over here, the roof would tell you, once there's a roof, then it just goes down. It just goes down. So even if it's breached in the corner, like it was in the courtyard case, who cares? Even if the walls are breached over here, if there's still, as long as there's a roof, it still goes down. So the Gemara has to say, the keruyo balachson deleka memra pitikra yervasosem. The house's roof is on an angle, which, by the way, back in the day was much more uncommon. Ner Tamid's roof was was the norm. Your home roof, presumably, was rare. The fact that it was on an angle, and therefore the Gemara is saying that the house's roof is on an angle, and the halacha is that when a house's roof is on an angle, we do not say. We saw this earlier. We do not say pitikra yervasosem. When do we say that the wall, that the roof goes down? Only when it's like this. When it's like this, so nice that I have a fold in it. Okay, when it's like this, we do not say that the roof goes down. Yeah? Okay, so bottom line again, according to Rav's saying, we're talking about a case, going back to the Mishnah. Both cases in the Mishnah, the case of the courtyard and the case of the home, we're talking about in the corner. In the case of the courtyard, we're talking about less than 10 amos. If it's less than 10 amos, why is it not a doorway? Because it's in the corner, and if it's in the corner, it's no longer a doorway, it's just a breach. And that's why the courtyard loses its status as a courtyard. You can no longer carry there. According to the second case, is a case of a house, also in the corner. But if it's in the corner, you still have the roof. The point is the roof is on an angle, and therefore it's a slanted roof, and therefore you do not have that going down. Good? Let's go further. Shmuel is going to disagree. Shmuel Amar afilu b'yasser mi'aser. Even b'yasser mi'aser. Even if you have the breach is more than 10 amos. Ask the Gemara, hachi miruach achas nami. So if that's the case, if it's more than 10 amos, then even if it's on one side, it should be invalid, right? In other words, if the breach of the courtyard is more than 10 amos, then that means the wall is no longer there. Once it's more than 10 amos, we no longer treat it as a doorway. Everyone with me on the case, right? It's a courtyard. Courtyard is broken more than 10 amos. That's not a doorway. It's missing a wall. And now you have a courtyard which only has 3 walls. It's not a courtyard. So the Gemara says, Mishum bias. He says, you're right. Really, the first case of the Mishnah could have just said 1 wall broke. The reason it talks about 2 walls is because the next case is talking about a house. And for a house, as we'll see in a moment why, he needs it to be 2 walls that are broken. Okay, why? Let's keep on reading. Ubayis gufei tikshe. Let's ask the same question in the house. When it comes to one, the one side being missing, then you say this halacha of the edge of the roof extends downwards. Okay, mishtei ruchos nami. Name a pitikra yovasosim. You should say the same thing. The edge of the wall extends downwards. Visu, and the Gemara asks further. Mi isle l'shmuel pitikra yovasosim. Does Shmuel actually even hold to this halacha of pitikra, right? We actually saw this before, right? Does Shmuel actually agree to this principle that the walls go down? Why? Va'itmar, we learned earlier, achsadra bevika, let's say you have a pavilion in an open field, right? Pavilion is something that looks like this. There's a roof. There are just basically like little slats or poles holding it up in the corners, right? So Rav says that Rav says you can carry under this entire thing. Why? Because these roofs are seen as all going down. Shmuel said, no, you can't carry in this space. It's considered like a carmelis, and even though it's a flat roof, you're not allowed to carry in it. So Shmuel, as it is, doesn't even hold of pitik or yod v'sosim. So how do we make sense of Shmuel in our Mishnah? So Halakash, Gemara says no. Ki leislei ba'arba. Okay, Shmuel does not hold of pitikra, of the sides going down, only in that case of the pavilion in the open field, where there's no walls at all. Where there's 4 walls are missing, well, let's say it a little bit differently, but basically where there are 4 walls missing, that's when he says, no way, we can't go, all these virtual walls can't happen. Aval b'shalosh islay, if let's say you have 1 wall, and now you're extending 3 walls, there he would allow that. We'll see why that's relevant to our case over here. But again, Shmuel, so that we're just starting in the beginning. This halacha of a rooftop where we treat the walls as going down, that Rav says, no problem, you could always do it. Shmuel says, as long as there's 1 wall, you could do it. But if there's no wall, if you have to, because then you only have to add 3 walls. But if there's no walls, you have to do 4 walls, can't do it. Okay, let's see how this applies to our Mishnah. Mikol makom kasha. At the end of the day, why did our Mishnah distinguish between one wall missing, two walls missing? So Gemara says, "Amri bei Rav mishmei Rav," similar to what they said in the Academy of Rav, in the name of Rav. Kigon shenifratz bekeren zavis bekeruya balachson. So Rav answered the challenge of our Mishnah by saying that the house was breached in the corner and the roof was at an angle. Hachinami, Shmuel is going to say something similar in the sense that konkid shenifratz bekeren zavis, that the house was breached in the corner. The keruyo barba. Okay, and it also broke the roof to a depth of 4 tzvachim. Okay, look at the picture over here. The picture is going to be the help. I'm not going to bother drawing this picture. But if you see the picture on 94b2, see that picture over there? Dun, dun. Yeah? Okay, that's what we're up to, in case you weren't following. Okay, so 94b2. We are up to the corner of the house, okay? And you see how it broke. Okay, it broke in a wide open area. Because it's wide open, it's seen as now open. In other words, it's more than 10 tvachim. Okay, it's more than 10 amos, excuse me. It's 4 sides. It's 4 sides, right? In other words, 2 sides. Remember, Shmuel said, what we just concluded from Shmuel is when it's a...
Yeah, so
4 or 2. How many counting, guys?
How many walls are broken?
How many walls have to go down to complete the house enclosure? Like
4.
4, right? So Shmuel's going to say when it's there's nothing to draw. Forget. What's it called? The point is that when Shmuel says when do we have Shmuel saying we don't say Pi Tikra Yorva Sosim? When it's open on 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So any case where it's going to be 3 sides open. 3 sides open, he will say that it's totally fine. That you could say the walls go down. Oh, you have a lot of time of that. Wow, your picture looks different than mine. Yeah, but it looks different than mine. Fancier. Yeah, same thing. Look, 1,
It's only 2 walls.
3. 2 walls are gone, but look at how many parts of the roof have to go down to include that space. It's jagged, right?
How many parts of the roof?
How many parts? So yes, 2 walls are missing, and that's what caused it to be a real opening, right? Because it's at the corner, it's caused it to be a real opening. But if it's a real opening, we said before, who cares? You have a roof. But what does Shmuel say? Shmuel says you're only allowed to allow the roof, the Pi Tikra Yorva Sosim, this principle of roofs going down, only applies up to 3 downs. 3 different times you can go down. Over here, there are 4, right? You see that? There are 4. And therefore, it's not going to work. Make sense?
What's the maximum amount that you were allowed to have to extend?
3. 3.
It's not with the roof, it's not with the roof, not it's got to go in so many different directions.
The roof has to go in 4 different directions over here, and therefore it's not going to work. Because Shmuel says up to it, which is similar again to the case of the pavilion, where it's in the open, right? There, if it's open on 4 sides.
There we had a full roof, and the issue was the walls.
But here too, you have a full roof, meaning wherever the roof is, it could go down. The problem is it's open on 4 sides.
Well, in the pavilion case, it wasn't. The issue wasn't the roof. The issue was that it doesn't.
The issue over here isn't the roof either. The issue is how many. Meaning, if according to Rav, in this case, it would be completely closed in. Not why? Because you'd say Pi Tikra Yorva Sosim could go up to 4. It could go more than 3 times, right? So you'd say where it says 4 tvachim, it would go down. Where it says 5 amos, it would go down. Where it says more than 5 amos, it would go down. Where it says 4 tvachim, it would go down. And now it's enclosed.
Right.
If there's no issue with the roof.
Have a smaller house.
Yeah. Okay. It's the corner. Yeah. That's not the issue. The issue is.
But that's what would happen.
Correct. It would be a little bit smaller.
It wouldn't extend. It would just go down right where it is. And according to Shmuel.
According to Shmuel, it's too many roofs going down, and therefore it can't be done. Everyone with me?
Yeah.
Clarification? Questions? No?
Well,
Yes.
What does jaggedness mean? Why couldn't you just draw a line that's all on top of existing roof? And then the jagged stuff, well, it's extra stuff, has nothing to do with anything.
But you need a roof to be able to go down. Which roof is going down? In other words, when we say the roof goes down, the only thing that's virtual is the wall. There has to be a roof on top of it. So the jaggeds are very relevant because you can't go ahead and only start. You can't pretend that there is a roof going all the way to the corner. There isn't.
I guess what I'm saying is if you could imagine it as being less than this, if the jagged part was totally missing, and you just drew a diagonal line between the edge of one wall and the edge of another wall.
If that's what the roof would look like, it would be okay. The problem is the way it's shaped is that there are still four times that we have to go down. In other words, at the end of the day, it's not meaning right. That's the reality is there are 4 different walls that need 4 different rooftops that need to be extended down. Yeah, he can play around with it 100%. Yeah, 100%. Problem is, it happened on Shabbos, so you're a little stuck. And I probably wouldn't recommend breaking off more of your rooftop until the insurance people come by. Okay, fine. Shmuel Amar Rav. The Gemara says further. Shmuel did not say like Rav. Why? Alachsam Lokatani, because their Mishnah does not mention anything about a slanted roof. Now, again, as I mentioned, slanted roofs are unique, right? The way Rav had to understand our Mishnah is that again, and the way Rav is understanding it, we're talking about a case where there is less than 10 amos, right? To do so, he had to understand that the roof was slanted. Slanted roofs were rare back then, and the Mishnah doesn't mention that, and therefore he doesn't want to say that.
But they're common now, so why wouldn't the same halacha apply to a slanted roof?
No. It's two separate things. Meaning, I think I realized as I presented, I think I may have said it in a little bit of confusing fashion. The commonality of it is not a reason why we say the wall goes down. The halacha, it's halacha mishmisina. Whether it makes sense, whatever, it doesn't matter. Its bottom line is that this is seen as going down like this. That's the bottom line. Point number 2, completely independent. In the times of the Mishnah, it's not common. And that's Rav's issue. So, the halacha on Lush Messina was never said about this, not because it was common or not common.
The fact that most roofs now are peaked
doesn't change anything in terms of halacha. Correct. Okay. Shmuel Amar, Rav Amar Shmuel. Rav does not say like Shmuel. In Kain Havile Achsadra, because it would be no different than. So Rav can't say like Shmuel because according to Rav, even in the jagged case, it's no different than a pavilion. And Rav, we know that he holds with a pavilion open on 4 sides. He holds you could do P tikra as you have so same that the walls go down on 4 sides. So it doesn't. So Shmuel's case does not actually get you anywhere. I'll get to Itmar as we said. Achsadra bivika. If you have a pavilion in an open field, Rav Amar mutal tzal b'kula. Rav says you let it carry throughout the whole thing. Shmuel Amar eman tzal el barba amos. You only let it carry 4 amos. Rav Amar mutal tzal b'kula. Why does Rav say or let it carry through the entire pavilion? Amrinam P tikra you have so same. Rav says that you hold the edge of the roof extend downwards, even 4 sides. Shmuel says you don't carry in this pavilion. Again, the case where this piece of paper is open on all sides, right? Because you do not say it goes down on 4 sides, but if it be 3 sides, you would be allowed to do so. Okay, says the Gemara. Further, the Esther Kuli Amalo Pligi. Okay, we're gonna have 2 versions about Rav and Shmuel. According to one version, both Rav and Shmuel agree that when it is less than 10 amos, then they are going to agree you're allowed to carry through the pavilion. We're going back to the pavilion case over here. Okay, so basically again, let's say this is the pavilion, okay, and we said, Shmuel said, oh, you can't carry in this place because you don't say it on 4 sides. But until we haven't really gone into the dimensions. Now we're saying, according to the first version, that they would agree if, let's say this is very small. Okay, let's make it smaller size. Okay, fantastic. And basically now it's less than 10 amos on each side.
That implies that each openings are doing that.
What do you mean?
Because it's less than 10. I mean, the reason they allowed them to carry it because there was an opening less than 10. But now on all 4 sides, it's less than 10, so it means there are openings on all 4 sides.
It's not because it's openings. No. Thank you. It's not because it's openings. It's because you say P tikra, you have a so same. Meaning he says that in this case, it's so small, you're allowed to do even Shmuel would agree you do P tikra so same even on 4 sides. When does Shmuel say you don't do it? When it's a large space, then he says, whoa, it's too big, you can't go down on 4 sides. The others who say that everyone agrees when it is more than 4 amos, that it, when it's more than 10 amos, okay. Ki pligi be'eser, right? When it's more than 10, everyone says you don't do it. Thank you. Ki pligi be'eser. When they argue, when it's less than 10 amos, that's when Rav says you ply it in 4 sides, and Shmuel says you do not, right? So again, according to one version, they would argue when the pavilion is more than 10 amos, that Rav would allow it, and according to one version, everyone agree when it's more than 10 amos, you don't do it. They only argue when it's less than 10 amos. Ask the Gemara about Rav Yehuda, Korah Arba Matir Bechorba, okay, 95A1. So we had a statement which we saw earlier that a beam, let's say you have a beam you had a ruined, you had like a house, the whole house collapses, and there's just one beam that's standing, okay? It's one beam that's standing over, okay? This whole used to be a house, all the walls collapse, and you just have like a little beam over here standing, okay? V'Rav Nachman Amar, and it's 4 tvachim wide, okay? V'Rav Nachman Amar Rav Avua Korah Arba Matir B'mayim, and we have this halacha that a beam of 4 tvachim wide you're allowed to carry in water. Mani. Now, anytime you have a beam, you're carrying under a beam, what principle are you using to carry under it? P tikra yord v'sosin. You're imagining imaginary walls going down, right? So the Gemara says, who is it? According to the version which says that when it's 10 amos or less, they both agree. You could say that be'eser v'divrei hakol. You could say that both those statements above, whether it's about the ruins or it's about the water, you would say that it's a Talmud case where the sides are less than 10 amos, and everyone agree. Lahachlishin to Amos be'eser pligi, according to the version that says they even argue when it's less than 10 amos, you'd have to say that both those opinions of Yehuda and Rav Nachman are kirav, they are going like Rav, who applies tikra, pi tikra on all four sides, right? So we have to just qualify and understand what those two cases are talking about. Okay, one more discussion about this four opening, when do you say it goes down on four sides when it's open on four sides? Lema Abaye v'Rava pluked Rava Shmuel b'kivitli. So we have a discussion we're going to bring in a moment about Abaye and Rava, and we're going to try to say that maybe they are arguing about the same thing that Rava and Shmuel are arguing about. Meaning, what are we talking about? There's a teaching about a person who places schach on top of a pavilion that has posts less than 3 tefachim around its perimeter. So let's say imagine this is your there's a pavilion and there's a post. Basically, you could have walls basically just like poles for your walls, right? That everyone's going to agree those are 100% good walls. Okay, so kshera, that's good. Okay, ema patzim, and if it doesn't have posts. So now we're basically talking about a sukkah. It just has corners, but no posts. Then Abaye Amar Kshera. Abaye says the sukkah is valid. What is Abaye saying? That we treat it as if the walls go down. The Rava Amar Psula. Rava says it is invalid. Okay, so Abaye Amar Kshera. Abaye says it's valid. Amar Pi Tikri Rav Sosim. It sounds like he's saying like Rav, that the edge of the roof goes down on four sides. Rav Amar Psula. Rava says it's no good. Lo Amar Pi Tikri Rav Sosim. Sounds like he doesn't say Pi Tikri Rav Sosim when it's four sides. So Lema Abaye Karav. It would seem like Abaye goes like Rav, or Rava Kishmuel. Rava would go like Shmuel. The Gemara says no. Aliba de Shmuel Kuli Amalo Pligi. According to Shmuel, everyone agrees that you have that it's true. According to Shmuel, everyone agrees you have to have at least one wall standing in order to do Pi Tikri Rav Sosim, in order to consider the other walls going down. Keep Pligi leave it to Rav. But Abaye and Rava could both agree to Rav. Meaning, Abaye Karav. Abaye says that if it's open on four sides, it's a good sukkah. That certainly goes like Rav, who said that when something is open on four sides, it's considered closed in. The Rava who says that for a sukkah it's no good, how does he still work with Rav? He'd say like this: Rav Hasam. Rav only said this. It's only when these the beams that surround the roof over here were made for a pavilion. But in the case of the sukkah, the beams that were made to hold up the sukkah, they were made to make a sukkah, and therefore, maybe he wouldn't apply this. In other words, we're trying to make a distinction. Rav is trying to say, I could also agree to Rav. Rav and I do not disagree. Rav said that when you have a rooftop and it's going to be considered closed in, that's because these beams were made for the sake of the pavilion. They were built for the pavilion. You have beams all around. They're made for the pavilion, and therefore we could treat the beam over here as if it's going down. But when we're talking about a sukkah, the beams were made to make a pavilion, and it happens to be some guy threw some schach over it. There, we're not going to say it's going to be valid for a sukkah because the sukkah walls, although technically they don't have to be made for a sukkah, but you can understand there's going to be more of a need for them to be made for a sukkah, and therefore this idea of the walls going down are not going to apply to sukkah. But I could agree to Rav and say when it comes to pavilion, it comes to laws of Shabbos, since the rooftop was made to be an enclosed area, therefore the walls would go down on each side. Have a great day.